on the battlefield. So today I had to skip my morning meal rations because there were no vegan or gluten-free options, which is really uninclusive. After this, I got ready for battle when somebody told me Melissa got blown up by a drone strike. I was actually...
You've seen this meme before. Strong men create good times, which create weak men, who create hard times, which create strong men, and the cycle repeats itself. Boomers like using this meme to mock Gen Z, but like everything else they say, this is just purely a projection. They're the actual weak men who created the hard times, and everyone is starting to see it and experience it now. But what if I told you that this meme isn't just a funny, relatable meme, but an actual historical cycle that's repeated itself for centuries with plenty of research behind it? The book The Fourth Turning, written by William Strauss and Neil Howe, proposes the theory of what they call a saeculum, an 85-year generational cycle in which society goes through a crisis, followed by a golden age, and then resets itself every length of a human lifespan or so. This is because a dominant generation grows up under a stable system and relatively good times, but they see the whole thing collapse when they come of age and become adults. To which they respond by overthrowing the system entirely and creating a better new one. The next generation then is a recessive one who maybe grows up experiencing some hard times, but by the time they come of age, the system has largely fixed itself, which causes them to have more faith in the system and become less individualistic as a result. And the cycle repeats itself. This is an oversimplification, of course, as there's so much more interesting information to this topic that there's literally an entire 600-page book about it. So definitely check out The Fourth Turning if you're interested. The theory is not without its critics, some of which have called it overly deterministic and unsupported by rigorous evidence, so take it for what you will. But it is worth noting that this book did pretty accurately predict the 2008 financial crash and the COVID pandemic when it was written in 1993, long before anyone had any idea those things would happen. The 4 different generation archetypes described in the book are prophet, nomad, hero, and artist. A dominant one followed by a recessive one. Now, it's important to note that these generational cycles are based on the historical cycle and not necessarily the modern day generational lines we've drawn. So he's classified anyone born between 1982 and 2005 as part of the millennial and Gen Z hero generation. So what does this actually have to do with what we're seeing in Nepal right now? Well, quite frankly, everything. Literally everything. Part 1, a huge update on Nepal. The Gen Z protests in Nepal have officially achieved their end goal. The former leader has been ousted and replaced by a new one who promises to listen to the voices and demands of the youth far more. A key figure in Nepal that Gen Z has been rallying around is 35-year-old Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah, a former rapper who frequently appears on Instagram in sunglasses, criticizing corruption, social justices, and government failures. Sound familiar? After the protests successfully toppled the government and installed new leadership, he told his 800,000 followers on Instagram, "Now, your generation will have to lead the country. Be prepared." It turns out, by the way, Nepal is just the tip of the iceberg. Similar violent protests have erupted across Southeast Asia in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. And the reasons for all these protests will sound very, very familiar to you. Sky-high youth unemployment, 14% in Indonesia and 20% in Nepal. Old and out-of-touch leaders who are totally clueless to the struggles of the youth in this economy. We don't know what the future holds after this, but one thing has been clear. These violent Gen Z protests have been shockingly effective. Prime ministers have been ousted. Governments have been toppled. Regimes have been overthrown, and the new leadership, whoever it ends up being, will have to provide some serious solutions for the youth. The end goal was to just have more transparency in the government, and then have all these old politicians who've just been there for the longest time and not having done anything for the country all resign. And then we sort of have this new leadership with no old ties who work for the people. Sid Saha Shrestha, 28, an IT security analyst who was protesting Tuesday in the Nepali capital, Kathmandu. In Nepal, the Gen Z protesters just didn't want to unseat the lavish lifestyles and foreign education that was built on the dead bodies of their future. There is something authentic about this generational framing, the moral outrage of the youth against the generation that is stealing their future, she added. The slogans about fairness, future, jobs, combined with tech savviness, are giving these movements an edge over traditional elites. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that these sentiments heavily echo the exact same sentiments many of us feel right here. It's crazy to think our fellow Gen Z, who live on the other side of the world, thousands of miles away, in a complete different culture and environment, are almost identical to us when it comes to being the revolutionary hero generation archetype that's ready to totally burn down the old system that clearly isn't working anymore and create a new, better world for everyone. I want to make it clear I'm not condoning violence. Quite the opposite, actually. You heard me say this before on the last video I made about this. I actually want to find a more peaceful resolution to this at all costs if possible. But I'm also a realist who understands that throughout history, if people are pushed to the absolute limit, violence is an inevitable consequence that follows, and we have to understand that in order to prevent it. Hey guys, so I'm on a mission and I need your help. You see, I've made it the purpose of this channel to defend Gen Z from all these nasty, delusional Gen Z haters, and I've just realized we're starting to get close to taking down the most despicable one yet, the angry guy. This guy is not just another delusional old fart calling Gen Z lazy. He's literally had videos where he openly celebrates Gen Z suffering and even dying. He's just straight up a terrible, terrible human being. Now, thankfully, his channel is rapidly dying and we are rapidly gaining ground on him as we speak. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us take down the biggest Gen Z hater out there. The current goal is to surpass him in subscribers by the end of summer. With your help, we can absolutely do this. Part 2. History repeats itself. Let's look at some historical examples using the Sakelum cycle to see what happened with previous hero archetype generations spanning back centuries. The Elizabethan generation was born between 1541 and 1565 and is of the hero archetype. They benefited as children from growth in academies. They grew up during the Anglo-Spanish War. They regulated commerce, explored overseas empire, built English country houses, pursued science, and wrote poetry that celebrated an orderly universe. The glorious generation was born from 1648 to 1673 and was of the hero archetype. They had a protected childhood with tax-supported schools and new laws discouraging the kidnapping of young people. After participating in the Indian Wars and Glorious Revolution, they became involved in the electoral office at a very young age. As young adults, they took pride in the growing political, commercial, and scientific achievements of England. They designed insurance, paper money, and public works. The Republican generation was also hero archetype, born between 1742 and 1766. This generation is known for participating in several global revolutionary movements during the Age of Revolution. This generation witnessed political turmoil in response to the widespread expansion of European imperialism and the vast social inequalities exacerbated by ruthless competition between rivals in Europe, the Americas, and Asia. They came of age during the time when the viability of mercantilism and imperialism was being questioned both in Europe and in Americas. Relying on Enlightenment philosophy, they unleashed violent episodes of revolution, vilified monarchy, and promoted republicanism. In colonial America, they participated in the American Revolutionary War, secured America's independence from British rule, and established the American government. Many founding fathers and leading figures in the early years of the independent United States belonged to this generation, including U.S. President Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, as well as the leading figures of the French Revolution such as Maximilien Robespierre, Georges Danton, and Camille Desmoulins. The progressive generation, hero and artist archetypes, was born from 1843 to 1859 and fought to free us from the slavery of the American Civil War, and of course, most recently, the greatest generation, who grew up during the Great Depression and fought in World War II. The historical pattern is pretty clear by now and gives us a glimmer of hope. Society builds something great, then gets complacent and greedy, and then a hero generation steps in and decides they've had enough. After these massive wars and revolution, we did mostly get a period of peace and prosperity afterwards. The clearest and most recent example is, of course, the booming post-war economy that boomers inherited. Good times creating weak men in a nutshell. And interestingly enough, as much criticism as Strauss-House generational cycle theory has received, as of right now, it looks like it will have predicted the future correctly once again. After the horrible assassination of Charlie Kirk a few days ago, tensions have hit a new boiling point. People can't even agree that murder is wrong anymore, and it feels like we're closer to an actual civil war than ever before, with half of Americans believing civil war is likely to happen in the next few years, and Google searches for civil war absolutely skyrocketing in the last few days. So the question now is, are we destined to see something similar happen to the West going into 2026? Part 3, 2026 and beyond. The way things are going right now, there's definitely going to be some breaking point where everybody snaps in the near future. The economic turmoil, record levels of inequality, and deep political polarization are clearly unsustainable at this point. But I actually don't think it has to be this way, and there is a possibility for a peaceful resolution. I watched a video the other day where someone mentioned the possibility of Americans simply agreeing to split apart and fragment into 6 or 7 different countries in the aftermath of all this. No need for violence, war, or bloodshed. I thought about this a lot, and to me, it seems like perhaps the only way to avert an all-out civil war at this point. I'm not sure 6 or 7 countries is even necessary. Maybe even 2 would be enough. This really seems to be the only way to ensure everyone gets what they want. And I don't really see much downside to this solution other than the fact that America will be less dominant and influential on the global stage. But let's face it, they're already rapidly losing power on the global stage as is. I am someone who believes in freedom in the truest sense of the word. I don't believe in capitalism anymore. But if you want to start your own capitalist country because you believe in it, well, you should be allowed to do so. I think the left and the right are both unhinged at this point, so I really don't see the point of forcing them to continue to live together when it's clear there's irreconcilable differences at this point. All these people trying to remain patriotic and talking about how they still believe in their fellow Americans or whatever are either coping or playing pure lip service at this point. It's okay to admit that it's time for a divorce. Nothing lasts forever, and we had a nice 250-year run. We're clearly way too divided at this point, and I just don't see the point of forcing all these people who clearly hate each other to continue to live with each other because of what? Why? I mean, some egotistical psychological need to believe that we're all united or something, or that we're all neighbors who love each other at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, so why not just peacefully split off into our own communities at this point and let everyone live by whatever it is they believe in? One thing, however, is clear. The days of Gen Z being some soft, lazy, entitled generation who can't get off their phones and aren't ready for the real world are over. In fact, they never began in the first place. Gen Z was never lazy, soft, or unready for the real world. They simply saw the quote-unquote real world you created was a total BS, stupid, rigged game and a scam that they rightfully had no interest in participating in. But now that they've been given the opportunity to change the game itself, that's exactly what they've been doing. One other tremendous success story of a Gen Z revolution that's toppled governments and created a whole new successful system is the story of Rojava, an autonomous new zone that was established in the wake of the turmoil of the Middle East. We explore this more in this video right here. Check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.